Students. In the last lecture, we talked about the elastic constant mu, which is Poisson's ratio, and which relate the lateral strain to the longitudinal strain. We also derived the expressions for volumetric strain of a rectangular body, and volumetric strain is nothing but the change in volume divided by the original volume. So in the today's lecture we will continue it further, and we'll also get the derive the volumetric strain for some other kind of machine objects. Let's start with the volumetric strain in a circular rod. So here we have a hypothetical case of a rod which is having diameter d and length L, and it is subjected to tension from all the sides. So that's why I am calling it a hypothetical case, because that's usually not the case in the machine parts. So let's assume that it is subjected to the tension from all the sides, and including the length side and the radial sides also. So because of this, there will be change in the length of the rod, and it becomes L to L plus delta, and the diameter will also get changed, and it will be from d to d plus delta d. So now the change in volume can be calculated by finding the final volume. So if the change in volume is delta V and the original volume is V, so the final volume will be pi by 4, the final diameter, which is d plus delta d whole square, multiplied by the length, final length, that is L plus delta L. If we just open up these terms and multiply them, we will get this expression where we will have the first term is d square L, second will be 2L d into delta d, and third will be d square delta L. Apart from these three terms, there will be other terms also appearing, but they will be multiple of small quantities such as delta d square into L, delta d into delta L. As the change in length and change in diameter will be very small, so their multiple quantities or their squares will be even further very small terms. So we are going to ignore these terms, and if we ignore these terms, we are left with finally the first three terms that are there. And in order to calculate the change in volume, if we subtract the original volume from the final volume, so the first term here, that will get cancelled out, and we are left with these two terms here in the expression. The volumetric strain is the change in volume divided by the original volume. So let's divide this expression with the pi by 4 d square L. So if you do this, you will get the 2 times delta d by d plus delta L by L. So delta d by d is nothing but the strain in the diameter, so we call it epsilon d, and delta L by L is nothing but the change in the linear strain, and we will represent it by epsilon L. So it is similar to what we obtained for the rectangular body. If you remember that we had the epsilon v is equal to epsilon x plus epsilon y plus epsilon z. Here the y and z direction both are the diameter sides, so they both are equal. You can assume that x and y are the diameter sides, so in that case x and y both are equal to diameter, and the z is equal to epsilon L. So that's why you get the 2 times of epsilon d plus epsilon L in the expression. We can also calculate the volumetric strain for the sphere, and in the case of sphere, we have the diameter of the sphere, so original volume is pi d cube by 6. The diameter gets changed from d to d plus delta d, so we get the final volume as pi d plus d delta d whole cube by 6. We will open up this expression from a plus b ka whole cube, that form, so a cube plus b cube plus 3a square b, and so on and on. So we will get these two terms in which we have d cube plus 3d square delta d, and there will be other terms which will be delta d square or delta d cube, so we are going to neglect those small terms. Now if we divide this, subtract it from the original volume pi d cube by 6, so this first expression will get cancelled out, and we are left with this expression of delta v. And in order to calculate the volumetric strain, we will divide it by the pi d cube by 6, and that will give us 3 times of delta d by d, which is nothing but 3 times of epsilon d, right, the diametric strain. Again you can see here x, y and z, all sides of having same strain, that is equal to epsilon d. So you finally get the formula epsilon v is equal to 3 times of epsilon d. Let's do some numerical on this part, which is involving the Poisson's ratio. So here we have a hollow cylinder whose external diameter is given to you, that is 25 centimeter. The internal diameter is 12.5 centimeter and the length of the cylinder is 50 centimeter. You are also given the material parameter for this cylinder. The modulus of elasticity is given to you, that is 200 gigapascal. The Poisson's ratio is 0.25. You have been given that this cylinder is subjected to the compressive stresses. There is a load that is being applied from both sides such that the compressive stresses are induced in the cylinder, and whose magnitude you know, and that is given as sigma equal to 840 meganewton per meter square. Now on the basis of these details, the data that is being given to you, you need to determine the change in the length of the cylinder because of the applied stresses. You need to find the change in the internal volume of the cylinder as well as the change in the density of the cylinder. Okay, let's first start with the first part, that is change in the length of the body. Now in order to calculate the change in length, you need to calculate the strain, longitudinal strain that is being produced, and strain is nothing but the stress divided by modulus of elasticity. So you have been given the value of stress directly. So you have minus 840 into 10 to the power 6 Newton per meter square. That is the stress value that is occurring in this. A minus sign is preceding it because it is a compressive stress. We divide it with the modulus of elasticity value, which is given to you, that is 200 into 10 to the power 9 Newton per meter square, and we calculate the strain value, which comes out to be minus 0.0042. Once we get the strain in the length direction or linear direction, we multiply it with the original length of the body. So epsilon times of L will give you the change in the length, because delta L by L is strain. So delta L will be equal to epsilon times of L. So you multiply the strain that you have just calculated with the length of the cylinder, which is 0.5 meter. So you get the value as in meters as minus 0.0021 meter, which you can also write in centimeter as minus 0.21 centimeter. So that is the net change, which is negative. That means there is a shortening of the cylinder because of the applied compressive stresses. Now the second part requires you to calculate the change in the internal volume. So in order to calculate the change in the internal volume, you need to calculate the volumetric strain. Okay, so for the change in volumetric strain, change in the volume will be calculated with the help of volumetric strain. Let's first calculate the lateral strain. So lateral strain that will be produced in the side of the diameter will be the mu times of the longitudinal strain, and it will be of opposite nature. We always know that. So it is a minus mu times of the longitudinal strain. So longitudinal strain was minus 0.0042. So we multiplied with minus 0.25. That gives you the positive 0.00105. That means the lateral strain is positive, means the diameter is going to increase, right? So we always know that the applied strain in one direction will produce the opposite kind of strain than the other directions. So the change in the internal diameter will be plus 0.00105, that is your lateral strain, multiplied by the internal diameter of the cylinder. So that is 12.5. So you calculate the change in the internal diameter. You can also similarly calculate the change in the external diameter by multiplying the lateral strain with the external diameter value, that is 25 centimeter. You can calculate the internal volume, the initial volume, before the compressive load is applied, that is pi by 4d square L. So initial diameter was 12.5 centimeter. So you can calculate this value from here. And now you can calculate the volumetric strain by using the formula epsilon x plus epsilon y plus epsilon z, that is equal to epsilon v. Here, because the two sides strains, the lateral strains are same, which are equal to diametral strain, that is epsilon y equal to epsilon z. Let's that give us equal to 0.00105 that we have just calculated the lateral strain, and the longitudinal strain we have calculated in the previous part, that was minus 0.0042. We are going to sum them up, and that will give us the volumetric strain as minus 0.0021. Okay. Now in order to calculate the change in volume, change in the internal volume, we need to multiply this volumetric strain value with the internal volume of the cylinder. So if you multiply it with the internal volume of the cylinder, you will get finally a reduction in the volume, which is minus 12.88 centimeter cube. Now in the third part, we need to calculate the proportional change in the density. Now we know that the object's weight is going to remain same, the mass is going to remain same, so that's why the weight will remain the same. However large amount of load we apply, the weight is not going to change. What is changing here is the volume. So because the density is weight per unit volume, so if the weight is remaining same, so the density will be inversely proportional to the volumes of the body. So if we calculate the original volume and the final volume of the material, we can calculate the ratio of the density from the original density to the final density ratio. So let's do this calculation. Let's first find out the original volume of the material. We are talking about the volume of the material that is used in the cylinder. So it is pi by 4 d square external diameter minus internal diameter square multiplied by the length of the cylinder. So that gives you the value as 18,407.8 centimeter cube. Let's calculate the change in volume, because we have just calculated the volumetric strain previously. So if we multiply the volume of the material, original volume of the material, with the volumetric strain, you can calculate the change in volume, which is again negative here because the compressive load is being applied, so material is getting reduced to a smaller volume. So volume value will be reduced by minus 38.66 centimeter cube. So final volume can be calculated by subtracting the change in volume from the original volume. Now as I just said, because the mass or the weight of the body remains same, so the density will be inversely proportional to the volume of the body. So original density divided by final density, rho 1 by rho 2, will be equal to final volume divided by original volume of the body. So which gives you the ratio of 1 over 1.002. So you can see that here the final density of the cylinder will be 1.002 times of the original density of the cylinder, that is rho 1. So far we have talked about three elastic constants. First one was the modulus of elasticity, Young's modulus E, which came from stress proportional to strain or Hooke's law. Then we had the modulus of rigidity, that comes from the shear stresses being proportional to shear strain. And then we talked about the lateral strain divided by longitudinal strain ratio, that is called as Poisson's ratio mu. So we have already discussed about E, G and mu. We have now the fourth elastic constant, that is called as bulk modulus. So let's look at the definition of the bulk modulus. It is related to the volumetric strain. So if we have a case of a cube which is subjected to three mutually perpendicular pair of stresses acting on its all six faces, then the ratio of the stress, normal stress, to the volumetric strain will be called as bulk modulus. So we have taken up a case of a cube which is subjected to same amount of tensile stresses acting on its all six faces, and if we divide this value of the stress with the volumetric strain that will be produced because of the application of stresses in this cube, that is termed as the bulk modulus of the material. Okay. Now we have four constants in our hand. One is E, another one is G, third one is mu, and the fourth one is the bulk modulus K. Let's try to establish a relationship between these elastic constants. Are there mathematical relations available? Let's see. So first let's have the relationship between the E, G and mu. So here we have a cube A, B, C, D. This solid cube is subjected to the shear stresses on its faces A, B and C, D. So we know about the complementary shear stress. We have discussed it in our first lecture. So because of the application of the stress on the sides AB and CD, there will be complementary shear stresses produced in the perpendicular sides of the cube, that is BC and AD. So you have the same amount of stresses, but the direction of rotation of them will be different. So there will be complementary stresses on this. Now because of these stresses, shear stresses, this cube will get deformed because of the shear stress, and it will take the shape of this parallelogram type, like A, B, C dash, D dash. Now let's do some construction. Let's draw the diagonal of the original cube ABCD, that is BD, and let's draw the diagonal of the deformed shape, that is parallelogram, that is BD dash. So we have drawn these two diagonals. Now from point D, let's draw a perpendicular here on the new diagonal BD dash, and let's term this point as L. So you have DL perpendicular to BD dash. From the definition of shear strain, we know that the angle between AD and AD dash will be called phi, which will be equal to the shear strain produced in the body. Now since the deformation is very small, so we can assume this angle BD dash D to be equal to the 45 degree. So this angle is 45 degree. Originally the BDC was 45 degree. So we assume that this is a very small deformation. So we can assume that still the angle BD dash D is 45 degree. And for the small angle phi, we already have defined that phi will be approximately equal to tan phi. So from triangle AD dash D, so this is the triangle minded here, AD dash D, we can find the value of phi, which is approximately equal to tangent of phi, as D dash D divided by AD. Okay, so this is the tangent of phi, D dash D divided by AD. Now we can define D dash D in terms of D dash L from the triangle D dash D. This is small triangle here. If you look at this small triangle, so from this we can say that DD dash will be equal to D dash L divided by cos 45. We have already said that angle D dash L is equal to 45 degree. So that's why your DD dash will be equal to D dash L divided by cos of 45. So let's replace the DD dash by D dash L by cos 45. This comes from this 90 degree triangle D dash D DL. Similarly, we can define AD as BD times of cos 45. So here we are considering the triangle ABD. So in the triangle ABD, the angle ADB is 45 degree. So that's why AD can be written as BD cos 45. Using these two, substituting the value of cos 45 as 1 by root 2, I can calculate the phi equal to 2 times of D dash L divided by BD. Now this BD is approximately equal to BL. We have just drawn a perpendicular from D point to the L, and we can approximate that BD is equal to BL. So in that case, this D dash L can be considered as change in the length of the diagonal BD, or the extension of the diagonal BD. So that's why it is a kind of a longitudinal strain in the diagonal of the cube. So the longitudinal strain in the diagonal BD can be written as D dash L divided by BD. So change in the diagonal, that is D dash L, divided by the original diagonal length, that is BD. So that is the longitudinal strain produced in the diagonal BD. And from the equation 1, we know that D dash L by BD is equal to phi by 2. So let's put it over here. So basically you are calculating the longitudinal strain value as half of the shear strain value in the cube. But we also know the relation between shear stress and shear strain as tau equal to g times of phi, which you can write as g equal to tau by phi. So from here, if we substitute phi, you can write the longitudinal strain as epsilon L equal to tau by 2g. Now, due to shear stress acting on the face AB and CD, the diagonal BD is subjected to the tensile stress. We have just seen that there is an increase in the length of the diagonal by the amount D dash L, and it is occurring because there is a tensile stress that is being applied on the diagonal BD because of the stress acting on the faces AB and CD. Similarly, if you look here, you can see that the diagonal BD is getting increased in length, while at the same time the diagonal AC is getting reduced in the length. So it becomes from AC, it changes to AC dash, and it is occurring happening because of the compressive stress that is acting of the same magnitude tau on this diagonal. So the result in the elongation of the diagonal BD and longitudinal strain epsilon n can be defined as epsilon L will be equal to the strain that is acting on the diagonal BD, that is tau divided by E. So this is the primary strain or linear strain. Then you have secondary or longitudinal lateral strain that is caused because of the other stress that is acting on the other diagonal AC. So at 90 degree to it is acting. So that's why it is mu times of tau by E. So the net strain, longitudinal strain, can be given as the sum of the stress that is being applied on the diagonal BD, that is tau by E, multiplied by mu times of the stress that is being applied on the 90 degree to it, the other diagonal AC. So mu times of tau by E. So finally epsilon L can be calculated as tau by E into 1 plus mu. From equation we have 3, we have already the value as tau by 2g. Let's equate these two values, and by equating these two values we can calculate the relation between these three quantities as E equal to 2g into 1 plus mu. So this relationship holds the key and between the relationship between the modulus of rigidity and modulus of elasticity with the help of Poisson's ratio. So if you know any two constant, you can always work out the value of the third constant here. Now let's work out a relation between the modulus of elasticity E and the bulk modulus K. So now let's assume that a cube is subjected to the tensile stresses sigma on each of its face, because we have already talked about the bulk modulus in this case. So by that definition we have the tensile stress sigma acting on each of its face, all 6 faces. So the direct strain that will be acting along each axis will be given by sigma by E. Okay, so strain occurred in a particular direction because of the stress being applied on the same direction. So that is called as direct strain. So that will be sigma by E. And the lateral strain, that is the strain caused because of the stresses acting in the directions perpendicular to the original direction. So that is mu times of sigma by E, as it will be of the opposite nature, so it will be compressive. So it will be minus mu times of sigma by E. So the net tensile stress along any of the axes will be equal to the sum of the direct strain plus the other two perpendicular direction strains, that is the lateral strains. So minus mu by times of sigma by E minus mu times of sigma by E, and finally you get the value as net tensile stress value as sigma by E into 1 minus 2 mu. So this is the net tensile strain along the direction X, direction Y, and net direction Z. So it is same and equal in all these three directions. So that is, we have epsilon X equal to epsilon Y is equal to epsilon Z. So the net volumetric strain can be calculated by summing all these three strains. So it will be simply 3 times of sigma by E into 1 minus 2 nu. But from the definition of bulk modulus, we know that bulk modulus is defined as the stress value divided by the volumetric strain. So if we substitute sigma by epsilon V here in this expression by bulk modulus K, we are going to get the relation as E equal to 3K into 1 minus 2 nu. So this is the relation between modulus of elasticity and bulk modulus with the help of Poisson's ratio. Now if from the equation 5 we have the relation, we can define the mu as E by 2g minus 1. So from this equation 5 we define here mu as E by 2g minus 1, and if we substitute this value of mu in the equation 6 here, we can find the relation between E, K and G. So this relationship we have derived or can derive will be relation between the modulus of elasticity, modulus of rigidity G, and the bulk modulus K. So you see, if we know any of the two constant, either E or G, we can find out mu. We know E or mu, we can find K, or we know K and G, we can find E. So any of these two constants, material constants, if you know, you can always calculate the value of the third constant there. Let's do a numerical. So you have a case of a solid rod whose diameter is 30 millimeter and its length is 200 millimeter. It is subjected to pull of 60 into 10 to the power 3 Newton or 60 kilonewton. You are also given the data that this particular pull will cause the change in the length delta L as 0.09 millimeter and the change in the diameter of this rod because of the applied load is 0.0039 millimeter. You see here you haven't been given any material parameter. So it is some kind of a experiment that you can perform. You don't know the material parameter value. Just simply take a rod, you put it in a tensile testing machine, you measure the original diameter of that object, you measure the original length of the object, you apply a known value of the load on this rod, and then you find, after applying application of the load, how much is the change in the length of the object and how much is the change in the diameter of the object. That you can always use using the vernier caliper or some kind of instrument. You can always measure the change in the diameter. So you can measure all these parameters in a simple tensile test experiment. So once you have got these data with you, you can calculate the material parameter, and in fact you are asked to calculate the material parameter Poisson's ratio, the modulus of velocity E, G and K with the help of these parameters that you have measured in the experiment. Let's start first with the Poisson's ratio mu. So for the Poisson's ratio, we know it is the lateral strain divided by the linear strain or longitudinal strain. So lateral linear strain will be given by change in length divided by the original length. So you have the change in length as 0.09, the original length was 200 millimeter. So you calculate this dimensionless quantity of the linear strain as 0.00045. You can also calculate the lateral strain, that is the change in the diameter divided by original diameter, which will give you the value as 0.00013. Poisson's ratio is by definition is lateral strain by longitudinal strain. So you divide these two values and finally you get the Poisson's ratio value as 0.289. Can you remember what kind of material it may be, which has the value of, let's say, 0.3 or approximate value of 0.3 Poisson's ratio? Now let's calculate the modulus of elasticity. In order to calculate the modulus of elasticity, let's use our old relation that we first derived, that is delta L is equal to PL divided by AE. So modulus of elasticity can be expressed in terms of the applied load, the change in length and the original length and the area as PL divided by A times of delta L. So we have the load value here 60 kilonewton, length value is 200 millimeter, diameter is 30 millimeter, so that's why the area is pi by 4 d square 30, and you have the change in length as 0.09 millimeter. That gives the value as 188.628 into 10 to the power 3 Newton per millimeter square, which you can also write in gigapascal as 188.6 gigapascal. So you see, it is so easy to calculate the value of modulus of elasticity once you know the value of applied load and the change in length for a given experiment. In fact, you don't need to draw the whole stress strain diagram in order to find this value. Now let's go and calculate the value of G. As I have told you earlier, while we were deriving the relation between the elastic constant, if you know any of the two constants value, you can derive the value of the third constant or the fourth constant. So we can find the value of G in terms of E and mu using the formula we have just derived. So it is E by 2 times of 1 plus mu, which give you the modulus of rigidity value as 73.15 gigapascal. And we can similarly also calculate the value of bulk modulus K as E divided by 3 into 1 minus 2 mu. So this brings us to the end of this first chapter, and soon we are going to have some assignments and quiz on this part. I want you to do all the numericals that are available to you in the book. So you please go through the unsolved and solved numericals. Try to solve them on your own.